What are we going to play today?
One of the most exciting things I get out of video gaming is the discovery of the unknown. There's a certain satisfaction you get when traversing the areas of a game, discovering its secrets. It's a great feeling when you're able to figure out the best way to fight a boss, or learn something new about a story you might have missed if you weren't paying attention. Recently, I was lucky enough to find and play through Lucah Born of a Dream, an indie game developed by studio Me Less Than 3. Lucah sells itself as an action RPG game, although I'm not really sure I would describe it that way, but we'll get into that later. The first thing you will notice when playing through Lucah for the first time is the unique style of the visuals. Everything is sharp and jagged. To me it looks like the scribblings of a madman. It's not exactly pretty to look at. It's disorientating and ominous, especially when set to the score. At the same time, it has a certain charm. Dark and hostile, it fits the world of Lucah perfectly. This is a world that doesn't accept you. It's a nightmare hellscape that wants you to give in and stop fighting. In this way, the visual presentation accomplishes exactly that, oppressing and discouraging you from going on. I love the art style. It's minimalistic and something you would only see from an indie studio where lack of budget encourages creativity. You know what everything's supposed to represent, and that's what's important. Especially when it comes to things like combat animations. Timing your attacks and dodges is a key component to this game. So I'm happy to say, despite the stylized visuals, animations always make it clear exactly what's going on in combat. The majority of your time spent playing Lucah will be fighting demons who constantly try to impede your progress. There are a good variety of enemies, with plenty of different attack patterns to always keep you interested, including some great boss fights. This is where the game really gets its legs. The hack and slash gameplay of Lucah is fantastic. The mechanics are easy to learn, but hard to master. You have a light attack and a heavy attack with a dodge and stamina bar. Sounds simple, right? It is. But what makes it interesting is the large amount of customization offered through the mantras and virtues system. Mantras are like your weapons. Some are fast and weak, while some are slow and strong. What makes mantras really fun is the ability to mix and match them. Picking one mantra light attack and one different one heavy attack leads to all sorts of fun combinations. In addition to speed and strength, mantras also have ranges. So you can have a light attack that's catered for close combat, and then have a heavy attack that's geared towards finishing them off after you've broken them. This system leaves a lot of room for experimentation, which will lead you to find your favorite playstyle. Along with mantras, there are also virtues. Virtues are basically perks where you get to pick various passive abilities. Experimenting and finding the right combination of virtues and mantras is one of the best experiences I had with the game. It changed up the way combat worked, so while playing you're always looking for new ways to fight, keeping the gameplay fresh and exciting. When looking at media released for Lucah, I often found the phrase Lucah, a game about finding yourself. I personally don't really get where this is coming from. I don't want to spoil the story elements of the game, so I'm not going to go into any specifics. But what I will say is that story and RPG elements for me felt kind of flat. It's obvious the developer had a lot of passion for the story he had written. For me, especially with some of the cutscenes, I feel like they really didn't mesh well with the gameplay. I'm not the kind of person who, after having the adrenaline rush of fighting a tough boss, wants to read 10 minutes of a text wall. And the story didn't even always seem related to what I was doing as a player within the world of Lucah. Maybe I'm just misunderstanding the story, but sometimes I felt really confused about how the world-building flavor text fit in with the world I actually inhabited. I understood the basic premise, but a lot of the time I would find myself in a situation where I was trying my hardest to comprehend why a character was in a situation, but just not understanding how they got there or what the relevance of said situation was on the rest of the plot. What was obvious to me, though, was the emotions of the characters. So maybe that was the whole point. I mean, in the nightmare that is Lucah's world, nothing really makes sense besides raw emotion. Or maybe I'm just a dumb idiot who can't comprehend a complex story. Either way, I don't think this game made me find myself, and I appreciated the game a lot more for the action elements than the RPG ones. One mechanic I haven't mentioned yet is corruption. Corruption is the bar in the upper right corner, represented by a percentage. When the corruption hits 100%, it's game over. But it's quite forgiving in the first playthrough as long as you're playing at a normal pace and you haven't died too much. In fact, until I died in my first playthrough, I thought that it was some kind of percentage completion bar. Anyway, once you finish your first playthrough, you're gonna unlock New Game Plus. New Game Plus is some of the most fun I've had with an action game in a long time. After I finished my first playthrough, I thought I was done with the game and started working on this review. But Colin, the main developer on the game, encouraged people to try New Game Plus in a tweet, suggesting that players would be very surprised at what they found. So I took on his suggestion and I tried New Game Plus, and I was very surprised. New Game Plus completely changes the way the game is played. The corruption mechanic is now the main focus of the game. Corruption now ticks up significantly faster as you're just idling through the game, as well as each time you're hit by an enemy. So you're racing against the clock while simultaneously also trying to do as well as possible not being hit. You also now get a score during each encounter. Based on your score, you'll receive a grade, which is calculated by time, combo multiplier, and how many hits you took. This for me made the game infinitely more interesting. My first playthrough felt like a tutorial showing me how to traverse the world and what mon-traverse combos were the best. Now you're ready for the true test. You have to go through the game as quickly as possible while also doing your best in combat. Playing through New Game Plus kept me on the edge of my seat the entire hour and a half I was playing, and I definitely plan to go back to try to beat my time again. I had a ton of fun with Lucah Born of a Dream. While the RPG story elements weren't for me, I can definitely appreciate that a lot of effort was put into them, and the crowd that loves going to Wikipedia to look for all the obscure Dark Souls references will probably have a field day with this game. What I did enjoy and plan on coming back to from time to time is the fast-paced combat and level exploration. Figuring out the optimal way to play and finish the game is definitely the big draw. As of this video's publishing, there are already a few speedrun entries, and I bet this community will only grow as time goes on and the game gets more exposure. Lucah is a good example of why I love indie games. It's a small, highly focused experience that does a few things very well.